So, I want to talk today about what the journey of taking a leap of faith looks like and why during that time it is so important. Not only during a time of taking a leap of faith or making a big transition, but just in life in general, why your circle and who you surround yourself with is so important. Okay. Now, this was inspired because I went for lunch with a girlfriend a few weeks ago who is about to make a big career transition. She's been doing what she's been doing for 20 plus years, and she's about to make a big leap. And we were having lunch, and she was kind of talking about all the ups and downs you go with that. She hasn't made the transition yet, but she's taking the first steps of what she needs to do. And she was just expressing to me the ups and downs mentally she's gone through, the anxiety that gets attached with it, the self-doubt, all the things that I've experienced for when I was making my big transition and still do, and every human has. Um, but we were talking about this stuff, and she had told me about how she's actually struggling with some of her personal relationships with her circle of friends, in the sense that she loves them, they love her, and they're always going to be there to support her. But while she's going through this transition, she's found it difficult to have conversations of substance with them, especially around this topic. And, I think it's mainly because some of them haven't experienced the leap that she's about to take. And so while they're there, supporting her on, it's hard to go to the depths of the conversation and really get deep with what she's experiencing because they haven't quite been there themselves. And also I want to mention that I had this conversation with another client yesterday that, when we're about to embark on tough things, sometimes what we don't want is someone to always be positive. We actually want people who are just going to meet us exactly where we're at. So I think what she values in our conversation, and she had expressed this to me, and she had said, I'm grateful for where our friendship has evolved to. She's like, because I look at the leap of faith that you took and the big transition you made, leaving, your last career to doing what you're doing now. And she's like, and it inspires me and it motivates me, and it just reminds me that if you could do it, then I can do it too. And it was so touching to hear her say that. um but I think what she likes so much about our conversations is when I sit with her, I don't sit there and pretend to tell her it's all going to be great. Like, yeah, it's going to be the best thing ever, you're going to be so happy you did it. Like, yeah, hopefully that is a byproduct of it. But I remember when she first told me she was going to make the transition, and she was like, um, I feel like this is the right thing I need to do. Like, I'm done doing what I've been doing. I've done it for 20 years, and this is the right next step. Like, I know this is exactly what I want to do. And I remember one of the first things I said to her, and I said was, you know, even if this next step isn't the thing that you end up doing forever, just knowing that you don't want to do what you're currently doing anymore should be enough to get you moving, you know? And I say that because that was my truth. I didn't know I was going to do what I'm doing now. I just knew that what I was doing before my last career wasn't it. That wasn't working for me anymore. So I had to say no and close that door in order for me to get to this point of realizing, oh, this is what I want to do next. Now that's my journey. That's not everybody's journey. I did it kind of the riskier way, where I just walked away first and I'm like, I'll figure it out after. A lot of people will have like a smoother transition, right? Um, but again, going back to our conversation, is I've never fluffed to her what this journey is like. The journey of being self-employed, the journey of everything starts and ends with you, the journey of not having a team like you're used to, or just having a system you're already getting plugged into. Like, it's not pretty. And is it worth it? Yeah. The work I'm doing, being able to talk to you guys now, my coaching, the transformation I see my clients do, absolutely, it's worth it. But is it easy? No, you know? And so when we were sitting there talking about, the transition in her conversations with her friends, and how, she appreciates the dialogue we're having, and just I think she appreciates how real I am with her about it, and normalizing the fact that you're going to have ups and downs. There are going to days where you feel like you are like the king of the world and no one can stop you, and you're going to have days where you're like, how did I get here? Like, how did I end up in this position? Or did I make the right decision? If you could be years in and you could still be questioning that. Can I make it? Can I do it? And you could have already had some success and you're still going to have those doubts because we're humans. And the point is not to get rid of those of those thoughts and feelings entirely. The point is just to know when they come, it's a moment. It's fleeting. They're going to leave. And then, the sun doesn't stay forever. The storm always passes, right? And in my opinion, the better you can waver those storms, the better you get at this whole dance of life. And when we were sitting there talking to her, I said, here's the thing that I've learned. Exposure leads to expansion. And she's like, ooh, like I haven't heard that before. And I don't even remember where I first heard it. But what that statement has always meant to me is that it is so important who you surround yourself with during vulnerable times like this, because there is already a world of doubt going on within you. The last thing you need is to be bombarded by it outside of you. And why exposure leads to expansion is so important is because you want to surround yourself with people who have done it, who have walked the path you're about to walk, who've been in your shoes and are now 10 steps ahead of you, where they can look back and be like, oh yeah, I did that. Just come on with it. Just keep taking one step at a time. I went through everything you're going through, and look, I'm still alive and I'm actually thriving and I'm actually figuring it out. Right. And that nature of exposure is so important because it can either work for us or can work against us. I was actually listening to a podcast before this on Diary of a CEO. I know I reference him all the time, guys, but he has such incredible interviews on there. But he was talking about how there was a study done where if you work next to someone in an office, for instance, and you work next to someone who is prone to just like making a lot of mistakes, not having high quality work, you are like way more inclined to also start making mistakes purely by the fact that you're exposed to them. Okay. The other example I could give you is if you guys have ever seen that example of like if you have a rotten apple and you sit another healthy apple next to it, it massively speeds up how fast the healthy apple rots as well too, purely by exposure. Okay. So energetically, it goes to show that what we surround ourselves with is so, so, so important. Okay. In all of life, right? Like no matter what we do, but especially in vulnerable times like this. Okay. So let's first dive into just like what the fuckery is of just what's going on within you internally when you decide to make a big transition, right? Again, whether that's a career change, whether that's leaving or starting a new relationship, whatever it is, moving, whatever. Like we are negative bias beings, meaning that we are wired to see the worst in things. And that's, first of all, purely from a survival aspect, right? Our nervous system, our subconscious, our ego, all kind of interchangeable somewhat, don't care if we're healthy or happy, healthy, or growing. They care that we're alive, right? So they go, what strategy do we need to keep Min2 alive? That's all we care about. We don't actually care if she's happy. We don't care if she's like in her dream job. Is she breathing? Is she eating? Is she like surviving? That's all we care about, right? So that's where that negative bias naturally comes from, is because there is a system ingrained in us to be like, we just need to know what the bare minimum is to keep this being alive. Okay. So when we think about making a big jump or taking a leap of faith, of course, we're going to think about all the things that can go wrong from external standpoint, all the way down to, am I good enough? Am I capable? What if I make no money? What if they leave me? What if I get fired? All these things. What if I regret it? And so we're inundated with this. We have, I think they say like 60,000 thoughts a day or something absurd like that. So like it's just going to happen. You can't stop it. And honestly, like I mentioned earlier, the worst thing I find when you're in situations like that is like, it's not fun to have someone just say, "Oh, just think positive," because that's like kind of delusional. It's bypassing the experience, honestly. Like that's how I look at it. It's like, okay, so making a career change, I'm just going to ignore the fact that I might not make any money for the first 6 months. Like we're just, or year or 2 years. Let's be honest, in business, it can take a few years before a business goes into the green. So we're just going to ignore the fact that that might happen. Like that's silly. Again, it's delusional. And sometimes our circle of influence, if they haven't made a big jump like that before, if they haven't gone through that exact journey and those exact motions, they think by talking positive all the time or keeping it really surface level, that's helping us. Where I think it's actually a lot healthier to talk about the doubts, to talk about the fears. Don't dwell in it. Don't let that consume you. But it's healthier to be like, yeah, this is a real fear, and that's okay. This is a real potential, and that's okay. You might start the business and you might have to shut it down. You might have to change. You might lose some money, right? And and that can be scary to admit all those things, but it's healthier to talk about, because the reality is no matter what path we choose in life, there's a cost associated with it, right? So if we're talking about, back to her example, staying in the same career she's been in for 20 plus years, there's a cost associated with that. The fact that she's not doesn't feel fulfilled, the fact that she doesn't enjoy the work anymore, the fact that she doesn't feel like she's growing, she actually doesn't like doing the work, it's costing her inner peace. Like there's costs she's currently dealing with by staying in that career. Is it a solid paycheck? Yeah. Is she always going to be employed in that space? Yeah. So cool. But there are some very real costs that she's currently living out, which is why she got the itch to look for something different in the first place. Now, what's the cost of the next one? Well, you go from being she's an expert in her field currently, she's been doing it for 20 years, to now being a newborn who's got to learn to walk on ice like Bambi, to having to learn systems all over again, to having to ask a ton of questions again, to having to not be the expert that knows all the answers, that's the go-to. Like that's very vulnerable. So there's that. There's also, again, the cost of not making money right away, maybe not making money for a couple years. Now, I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, especially in her case, but is that a possibility? Yes. The cost of maybe having to put in more time equity in the beginning, because again, she's a beginner again, she's not the expert anymore. Having to study longer, I was like, there's a cost associated with it, right? And so when you're deciding whether I stay or whether I go or I take that leap of faith, you have to say there's costs associated with both, but which path is more in alignment with the life that I desire and what I want to do next in my life, right? And that's why being exposed to people who've already taken that leap of faith or done those things is so important, because while you're being clouded by all the doubt and potential failure in your mind, because again of that negative bias, they're able to see you where you're at, hold space for you where you're at, and then also remind you that it's possible, right? And that's so important. That's one thing I really valued about working for my previous employer. And most of you probably know who I worked for, but they are the top luxury brand auto dealer in the world. And by working for them for 9 years, I was exposed to the top 1% in the city I'm in Edmonton, right? And probably Alberta, because there's only really two big cities here where you'd go buy this particular vehicle. And so I'm surrounded all day by clients who I was doing good, guys. I was making I was making multiple six figures working there. And I made my first six figures at 26 years old. These people would come in there and I'd feel like I was just your average Joe, like just a, just a normal peasant. And of course, like we all are on a human level, but like seeing what these people owned, seeing the businesses they ran, seeing what they've done with their money. And because the last 7 years of my career, I was in a finance position, I'm asking people all day long what they make for money. I'm seeing bank accounts. I'm seeing tax returns. I'm seeing numbers way larger than most people will ever see, right? And the positive side of that for me was like, wow, look at what's possible in the world. Like if you've never met a millionaire, like, yeah, you could probably like, okay, yeah, people make $1 million in this world. Cool. I sat down with multiple of them. And guess what? They're just normal human beings who found a way to make it work, who found a way to win, who were brilliant people, not downplaying their genius. But they have the same heartbeat as I do. They have the same two eyes. They still sweat. They still get stressed out. They still do all the normal human things that the rest of us do, but they found a way to win. And that was one thing, and I'm still grateful for, because I still stop in there often. I got to get my vehicle serviced, but I still have a lot of friends that work there. And that's one thing I always value about going in there, is the exposure to that clientele and the things that they have accomplished, and just reminding you that it is possible. Okay. And so, you know, when you're going through a transition of making a big jump, again, you are in a really vulnerable place because you're stepping outside of your comfort zone. And who you surround yourself with is really important, because they're either going to help make that journey a little bit more, like, add to your battery pack, or they're going to drain you. Right. And so you have to be careful sometimes about who you're having these conversations with. I know when I got back I quit my job. I'd left there at the end of March, and then I took 2 months off to go to Asia. So, like, to completely disconnect. And I left within 2 weeks of quitting. I was out. Okay. And, as soon as I got there, it was, of course, amazing. I was in Bali. And it was a forced separation, not only because I was physically somewhere else, but because the time zone was 13 hours difference. So I literally had, like, when I'm sleeping, everyone in my family and friends were here were awake, and vice versa. So I had a lot of forced separation. Now, it was great because it really forced me to unplug and be present with myself. But when I got back after my few months of traveling, of course, the natural energy of the hustle and bustle that exists here started to hit me and my system again, right? And now I wasn't protected by the distance and the time zone change. Now I'm back into that same environment that I used to run this hamster wheel in. And I hadn't figured out what I was going to do yet. And so now I'm home in Edmonton. Like, I'm not on a beach in Bali drinking a coconut. I'm home in Edmonton. All my friends are working. All my family's working. And I'm sitting there on a random Tuesday being like, what am I doing with my life? And so, of course, the natural temptation is, should I get a job? Should I go back to what I was doing before? Should I just get a part-time job? Should I do this? Should I do that? And all these stories and doubts and thoughts starting to run in my head. And I just remember telling myself, like, no, that's why you left in the first place, is because you didn't want to do that. And I had also, I'm grateful my line of thinking worked this way. I had also made sure before I left that I had set myself up and saved up a lot of money, so that when I did come back, I wasn't going to have to rush back to work purely out of financial reasons. Like, I gave myself a pretty good cushion to make sure I could take the time that I needed to make the right leap of faith into the next thing for me. But yeah, that temptation creeped in real quick. And I remember having a talk with one of my girlfriends, and she loves me. And I know she was saying this in she's just being honest. She's like, I don't get it. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well, I don't get it. I don't get why you quit your job. I don't get why you took off. I don't really get what you're doing now. She's like, but I love you and I support you no matter what. And I understood where she was coming from, because, again, from the outside looking in, I had it made. Like, again, financially, position wise, the lifestyle I was living, I was healthy. Like, I had it made, but it wasn't in alignment. I was suffering internally. Right. And so when she said that, it really hit me how I was now going against the grain of what everyone else is doing. And I know this, like, I run a coaching business now that doesn't seem that against the grain, but it is for me and what I was doing. And in the fact of, it's not the line of work that I'm doing now that goes against the grain. It's the fact that I left something that most people would have killed for, as far as an opportunity to just, like, be a gypsy and see what happens next. Like, I left what you would quote unquote call the ultimate security, a position, again, people would have fought tooth and nail to be in. And I just gave it up for what I didn't even know at that time. Right. And so when I realized that I had to be really mindful of the conversations I was having with the people around me, especially with, like, the people who love you the most, like my mom, Asian mom cares only about security and safety. So always worried about me. But I had to start surrounding myself with conversations of people who had taken a leap of faith, people who were business owners, people who understood the path of entrepreneurship and what that took up and what that takes out of you. And so whether that be talking to people I actually know, whether that be listening to podcasts and consuming content of people who are like motivating you on this path, again, I had to be really mindful of what that inner circle looked like, because I wanted to make sure that those influences supported me and gave me the boost when I was feeling doubtful, when I questioned whether I could do it, when I felt lost and had a moment of like, did I do the right thing? Like, I needed to hear from those who also had those same doubts and worries, yet still found a way to make it work, and then made it work a hundredfold, you know? And so when we go back to this idea of exposure leads to expansion, like, again, do you want to be sitting next to the rotten apple that's going to make you rot sooner? Or do you want to be sitting next to a bunch of healthy apples that maybe prolong how long you stay healthy? Like it literally is that finicky, guys. Like, it's as simple as, or is this energetic environment going to bring me up, or is it going to tear me down? And even if you're a resilient person, I would consider myself a very resilient person. Okay. Like, I'm pretty grounded. I'm not pretty grounded. I'm very grounded. I'm still human, of course, but like, I know who I am. I know I'm not easily offended. I'm not easily manipulated. Again, human, have had moments, but like, all in all, I'm pretty strong on who I am. And even then, I still have to be mindful of the conversations I'm having and whether they're serving me or not. And another instance of that, like, honestly, is like with my mother. And my mother is amazing. She's so loving. And I would say is like the definition of unconditional love. Like, she's just incredible. But my mother is naturally a worrier. I'm sure a lot of your moms are. And she's naturally anxious. And so, God bless her heart, I will start a conversation with her. And by the end of it, I'll be worried about something that I wasn't even worried about before. You know what I mean? And I'm like, how did I get here? And it's because, obviously that connection of mother-daughter is so vulnerable. So like, I'm her heart and she's mine. You know what I mean? So like, when she's talking to me, it's going to hit on a completely different level than if I'm talking to a coworker or a friend, right? So there's more exposure there. But then again, so when she talks, it's like I take on her anxious energy so quickly. And my boyfriend had actually made a comment about it, and I said something that was a little insecure, and he's just like, babe, that's your mom talking. And I'm like, oh my God, like, it is, you know what I mean? It's like, we do become our parents. And it's just a moment for me to realize that, again, just, you have to be mindful of who you're talking to about certain things. So some things I know I don't bring up to my mom, not because I don't love or trust her, but because I know her reaction is going to be strictly out of protection and err on the fearful side, where there's some conversations where I need someone to build me up, to pump my tires, and to remind me of who the fuck I am. Right. And I'm so grateful for those. So all of that to say is, like, wherever you're at in your life right now, and whatever you feel like is the next big step for you, whether that be, again, just whatever it is. And also, don't, the other thing is too, is we're natural that to let me start again. When we want something different for our life, I've done this a lot, probably still do it. When we talk about it, even though if we're going to go after it, we still talk about it with this sense of like, well, and it might not happen, or something will probably go wrong. And there's an aspect of that being like, okay, yeah, there is, let's just be real. I'm running a business by myself now. I'm going to make a mistake. It's going to happen. But sometimes we say things in a way where actually almost like set us up for the failure without realizing. Like, we speak the failure into existence, and we do that because we're trying to protect ourselves, so that if it happens, it's like we're not shocked, or like subconsciously we're right about the fact that it doesn't work. Okay? I hope I'm making sense what I'm saying right now, but like, for instance, it's like, again, if you're going to go to a new job and you're going to be like, oh, well, everything seems really great, but like, my boss is probably going to end up being an asshole again. Ha ha ha. And you kind of laugh about it. And it's like you're doing that to almost like maybe you have PTSD from your last job and your boss wasn't kind to you. And so now you're just kind of like, you're just putting it out there. So in case it does happen, you're not shocked or surprised. And that's what you think you're doing. You're kind of like, oh, I'll just ease the blow and say it now. But what you're actually doing is you're putting a a belief out into the world. And when it does happen, what it actually is doing on a subconscious level is it's telling you you're right. And humans love to be right. But as my man Peter Crone says, fight for your limitations and you get to keep them. So if you put out this negative bias, this quote unquote doubt out into the world as a protection mechanism, subconsciously what's happening within your body is you're going to go, let's find a way to prove ourselves right. And so maybe you walk into a situation and set up a circumstance where you might piss off your boss indirectly, or maybe you look for holes and you actually kind of make him your enemy before he's like you make the relationship worse than it is off the bat versus like inviting in and welcoming it and going in with your guards down. You go with your guards up. And of course, if you go in a relationship with your guards up, we already know what that breeds. Like, you know what I mean? There's this whole undercurrent that's happening. Right? So these are the things we have to be mindful of that we do as humans. And again, this is why it's so important to have a great circle around you. And that doesn't have to be a ton of people. That might be one or two people that you know that you can confide in and say your ugly truth, and they're going to understand it. They're going to be able to support you and hold space for you. And they're also going to be able to give you the real of that situation. They're going to be able to poke holes in what you're saying. And that's why I love this coaching space so much. You know what I mean? Not to have a shameless plug here, but yes, like that's why I love doing what I do so much. And guys, I have my own coach who pokes holes in my system and my stuff because they have a business that is 10 steps ahead of mine, and that's the business I want. So I have my own coach. But why I love coaching people is because I get to help them identify these blind spots that aren't even at play. And I get to do it in a way where it's loving and supportive. And also because I've walked their shoes. And so then every time a client sits down with me and I'm like, look, I can help you. I trust me. I got you. Like I'm always so confident, and rightfully so. Like I always am. I'm not fluffing. And they're like, is there really light at the end of the tunnel? I'm like, yes, I promise you there is. Yes. And and from their perspective, they decide to start working with me because they know what they're doing is no longer working. So back to my original statement is they don't know what what the next step is because they're stuck in burnout, but they know that what they're doing isn't working. And then what they feed off of is my belief and my conviction because it works. I know 10 toes down, hand on my heart, on everything I love that my system works. And I know that I can get them from point A to point B. And so then again, the exposure, they're being exposed to someone who's walked in their shoes. They're being exposed to someone who's now on the other side of this and is living life in a different way and still having success and still building a business and still, you know what I mean? All these things. So that exposure to me leads to their expansion. Okay. So all in all, I hope what you take away from this is sometimes we have to take an audit of who we're surrounding ourselves with and who we're having certain conversations with. And if you leave conversations feeling yucky about things, ask yourself, is this someone I want to continue having this conversation with? Now, I will say, depending what the situation is, everything is very nuanced. Just because someone is saying something you don't like doesn't mean that they're in the wrong or that you shouldn't be having the conversation with them. Okay. If you are in a situation that's toxic, maybe that's a relationship, maybe that's a job, and people who genuinely love you are seeing what's happening and they're going, hey, like, you don't have to put up with this. You deserve better. You know what I mean? Like if it's coming out of a place of wanting better for you, that's a different conversation. And sometimes that can feel triggering to us because we're not ready to hear that, or we're so lost in the sauce of the relationship. We're blinded, been there, like, or blinded by the lust, the quote unquote love that we think it is, that we're realizing that we're not being treated properly or we're not in a healthy dynamic. And again, that could be professionally or personally. And when we have people who genuinely care about us, who are just saying like, hey, and they're asking us some tough questions and that feels uncomfortable, that's different, right? If they're saying things from a place of they want better for you, we have to hold space for that and ask some deeper questions. But if you're trying to take a leap of faith and people are encouraging you to play small, that's where we have to ask, do I want to still have these conversations with these people? In both cases, the outcome is the same. Whether it's the people who love you, who want better for you, or the other one, the point is, does this conversation expand me? Exposure leads to expansion. Does this conversation expand me? Does this conversation encourage me to get out of my own way? Does this conversation encourage me to get out of my comfort zone and see that I don't have to keep playing small anymore and that I can go after greatness and that I can do something different? Does this conversation believe in me, believe in who I am as a person and my worth and what I'm capable of? That's the tone that you want. Okay. And if you don't have anyone in your life that can really breathe life to you in that way, there's so much content these days, guys. So much content. Business, professional, personal, love, relationships with your parents, kids, whatever. There's so much content these days that if you don't have a physical person in your life that can't hold that space for you yet, start there. And I promise you, if you expose yourself to that stuff enough, where you start to show up in a different space because you're exposing yourself to it, your relationships around you will naturally start to shift. They'll either start to fall away, or the other people around you will rise with you, or you're going to attract new people into your life that can also meet you on that same level, on that same frequency. Okay? So, exposure leads to expansion. Your circle matters, and protect your energy at all costs. That is your currency, your time, your energy. That is everything. That is what dictates the quality of your life, is how your energy is exuding, how you're feeling, all of that. So protect it at all costs. And don't let that little nagging voice in your head be your demise. Security is a construct, time is a construct. Like, these are all things in our head. So we just have to get out of our own way. But the beautiful thing about being human is we don't have to do it alone. We've all experienced the same doubts, the same fears, the same insecurities. And when you can find those humans who have lived through those things and still choose to move forward anyways, and create something great for them and be loving and supportive in the process, in my opinion, you've hit the jackpot. So I hope this helps, guys. And we will see you in the next episode.